Hey everybody, I'm Jamie Poisson. It's almost hard to imagine now the degree to which Canada's political class was united on the issue of immigration, specifically on increasing it, bringing in more newcomers more quickly to help grow the population and with it, the economy. Because now, many of those same politicians are singing a very different tune, as it's regularly stated as fact by pundits of all stripes that Canada's immigration consensus is broken, and that it could take a long time to get it back. Over the next 2 episodes, I want to trace the rhetorical 180 on immigration, how it happened so quickly, and what it means for our country now, as Canada shrinks its population for the first time in history. To start the story, I want to go back a little over a decade ago to a really dark moment. In early September 2015, when a little boy's body washed ashore in the Mediterranean.
The image of Alan's body on a Turkish beach, face down in the sand, is now seared in the world's consciousness. This is what
3-year-old Alan Kurdi died, along with his mom and brother, trying to cross the ocean to escape the war in Syria.
They didn't deserve to die. They didn't. They were going for a better life.
The boy had a connection to Canada. His aunt lived in British Columbia.
To be honest, I don't want to just blame the Canadian government. I'm blaming the whole world for this not helping enough the refugee.
The image of his lifeless body facing down as if he were only asleep was broadcast on every major network, printed in the pages of every newspaper, and it changed the conversation around the refugee crisis in the country, and with it, the 2015 federal election.
You don't get to suddenly discover compassion in the middle of an election campaign. You either have it or you don't. And this government...
Then Liberal leader Justin Trudeau seized on the issue.
We have had an immigration minister and the preceding immigration minister who have not responded as Canada should to the humanitarian crisis that has been ongoing for years in Syria.
He hammered then Prime Minister Stephen Harper's record on the file.
Unfortunately, this Conservative government, despite its promises, hasn't once lived up to even its meager commitments in terms of accepting refugees from Syria and elsewhere.
And promised a more open refugee system.
That's why the Liberal Party, months ago, even before this campaign, talked about setting an initial target of 25,000 Syrian refugees.
In a leadership debate, Trudeau went after Harper for changes to a federal healthcare program that in effect denied some benefits to refugee claimants.
And they cross the oceans and they make it to Canada, and what does Mr. Harper do? He takes away their health care.
Harper defended the move, saying only bogus refugee claimants were denied. But in doing so, he used this phrase, old stock Canadians.
We do not offer them a better health care plan than the ordinary Canadian can receive.
That's
I think
not
that's something
true,
that
Mr.
most
Harper.
new and existing and old stock Canadians agree with.
Trudeau took this as another opportunity to present Harper as divisive, particularly on questions of Canadian identity.
His willingness to set new Canadians against people who've been here for generations. So the fact is, Mr. Harper is yet again highlighting that he doesn't believe that a Canadian is a Canadian is a Canadian, that there are different categories of Canadian.
It's a message that resonated. In October 2015, Trudeau's Liberals won with a decisive majority.
They come to office in the fall of 2015 with this promise that they're going to resettle 25,000 Syrian refugees by the end of that December.
That's Aaron Wary, senior writer with the CBC's Parliamentary Bureau.
The public service comes back to them and says, there's really no way for you to do this. It's basically impossible to get 25,000 Syrian refugees here by the end of the year. And then Prime Minister Trudeau's response is basically, well, I want to try to do it anyway.
They don't quite pull it off that year, but they come close, hitting that 25,000 target just a few months later in February. For context, the Obama administration in the U.S. was only pledging to take 10,000 Syrian refugees, around the same time.
That becomes a kind of hallmark of the Trudeau government's and Trudeau's early time. There are those images of Trudeau greeting refugees who have just come to Canada.
Maybe you can picture them. The images Aaron's referring to are from Toronto's Pearson Airport. Trudeau personally welcomed a family right after they landed, handing them winter coats and a little girl a teddy bear.
Welcome to your new home. Thank you. You're not even going to remember this.
It's hard to imagine a politician doing that today, with a family from Gaza or Sudan maybe. But in 2016, this sort of warm, open-armed welcoming of newcomers was a big part of Trudeau's brand. And by extension, Canada's too.
And there's sort of a transition from how this differentiated him from Harper to how it differentiates him from what's happening elsewhere in the world, particularly with Donald Trump.
Donald J. Trump is calling for a total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering the United States until our country's representatives can figure out what the hell is going on.
This was during Donald Trump's first term, when within a month of becoming president, he issued an executive order indefinitely suspending the admission of all Syrian refugees and declared what was commonly called the Muslim ban, barring entry to the U.S. from 7 majority Muslim countries. In response, Trudeau tweeted, "To those fleeing persecution, terror, and war, Canadians will welcome you, regardless of your faith. Diversity is our strength." But diversity wasn't the only argument Trudeau's government was making for welcoming more newcomers.
I think it started out very much as diversity is a good thing for the country. And then it transitions into immigration is also going to underpin a strong Canadian economy. There's a Council of Economic Advisors that is appointed by Bill Morneau, the finance minister at the time, to advise the government on sort of a long-term plan for economic growth, because there's a larger conversation happening at the time about the Canadian economy not growing very fast.
This advisory council is chaired by Dominic Barton, who at the time was a director at the powerful consulting firm McKinsey & Company. Mark Wiseman, then president and CEO of the Canada Pension Plan Investment Board and current-day ambassador to the U.S., is also on Trudeau's council. Barton and Wiseman also happen to be co-founders of a nonprofit think tank called the Century Initiative. The Century Initiative sought to triple Canada's population to 100 million people by the year 2100 to, quote, enhance Canada's long-term prosperity, resiliency, and global influence. But back to this advisory council. They call their final report to the Trudeau government The Path to Prosperity. In it, they write about Canada's aging population, the strain it will put on public finances, the decline in labor force participation, and how that decline will hurt economic growth. And one of their key recommendations to deal with this, increase annual immigration by 50% over 5 years.
So it's not just a values-based thing that is about the idea of Canada or the values that Canada wants to represent. It also becomes, this is how we're going to build a strong economy. We're going to show people the value of immigration on an economic basis. And for a period of time, that actually seems to be working. I don't recall there being any kind of serious backlash or concerted backlash to what the Trudeau government was doing in those days.
By the time the next election rolls around in 2019, conservative criticisms of liberal immigration policy mostly have to do with irregular border crossings, people who walk over at Roxham Road in Quebec, for example. Then leader Andrew Scheer accuses Trudeau of damaging the immigration system's integrity by encouraging what he calls illegal immigration with his Canada will welcome you tweet. But these critiques aren't like a wholesale attack on Canada's immigration levels. Those attacks come from another party, a new party, launched by former Conservative Maxime Bernier.
The billboards have popped up along highways across Canada. Say no to mass immigration, vote People's Party. Launching his campaign from his Quebec riding today, Maxime Bernier defended the billboards.
We want fewer immigrants, a maximum of 150,000 a year. And, we're not for mass immigration.
The public backlash to these say no to mass immigration billboards is so strong that the owner of billboard space, Pattison Outdoors Advertising, pulls them all down. Even populist conservative commentators like Danielle Smith, who was a radio talk show host at the time, disavowed Bernier's messaging on immigration.
Some people are confused by this, but they think that I'm in favor of Maxime Bernier's immigration plan. If you think that, let me disabuse you of that notion. I am not in favor of his immigration proposal because I have witnessed, and I became very, very pro-immigration when I was when I was with the Canadian Federation of Independent Business during our boom. And what I observed is that there are certain jobs that you cannot fill, no matter how hard you try. The only way to fill them is to bring in people from outside the country on a temporary basis. And if they're good at it, enjoy it, and want to stay here, provide them a path to permanent immigration. So to me...
And on election night...
But this is the big story. Maxime Bernier has lost his own riding.
He tried to ride the coattails of populism. It didn't work. And I don't know what happens to the People's Party because there ain't no people.
The idea that mass immigration was a problem in Canada was an idea relegated to the political fringes.
The Environics group has been looking at how Canadians feel about the immigration system, about how immigration is affecting their society for almost 50 years now, since the late 1970s.
This is Andrew Parkin. He's the executive director of the Environics Institute for Survey Research.
At that time, 2014, 2015, and the years that followed, that was the time where attitudes to immigrants and to refugees were becoming more positive.
Throughout these years, throughout the 2015 federal election, the Syrian refugee crisis, throughout Donald Trump's first term and the Brexit campaign, and the 2019 federal election with the new People's Party and its calls to end mass immigration.
These were all times where we would ask these questions and think, wow, I wonder if any of this is really kind of pushing attitudes back in Canada. And the answer was always no. So all of that period was in this period where we start to talk about, a consensus in Canada, in favor of a fairly welcoming immigration system.
If you look at what was happening 2017, 2018, 2019, labor markets were getting tighter. More people are exiting the labor market than entering it.
This is Armine Yalnizyan. She's an economist and the Atkinson Fellow on the Future of Workers.
Labor markets are getting tighter. Unemployment rates are falling. More people are able to find jobs that actually better fit their skills.
And I think what emerged, in a positive light was a consensus that immigration's beneficial.
And this is Christopher Warswick. He's an economist too, a labor economist at Carleton University.
I think Canada was probably fairly unique in the world of having a consensus where almost every party was in favor of immigration, and I think that still remains.
In 2020, the pandemic hits. There's this truly unprecedented economic shutdown, and as travel restrictions kick in, new arrivals to Canada nosedive. In retrospect, of course, this moment is just a blip.
I think in the wake of the reopening of the economy after the pandemic shutdown, we just could not fill enough jobs fast enough.
And it was right around that time there was a lot of lobbying of the federal government to fix this problem somehow.
By 2022, politicians across the country are talking about the urgent need for workers. There's Ontario's progressive conservative premier, Doug Ford.
Friends, we're building Ontario, but right now our province is in the middle of a historic labor shortage. In fact, it's the largest labor shortage in a generation.
And Alberta's United Conservative Party Premier, Jason Kenney.
Over the past month, I've met with nearly 20 major industry associations, which collectively include, and we've spoken to hundreds of Alberta's largest employers through their industry associations. All of these groups report that the single biggest challenge they are now facing is a shortage of workers, which I know is a paradox because we still have 8% unemployment.
A A senator from Ontario, Robert Black, who was appointed by Trudeau's Liberals, wrote that the food and beverage industry was facing such a debilitating labor shortage. It threatened to cripple Canada's food system as we know it, and described how a consortium of industry groups were lobbying for the loosening of restrictions on the temporary foreign workers program to address the problem.
I try to describe the economics. I try not to make value judgments. I'm not judging the employer groups. I think they were pursuing their own interests.
The feds responded pretty quickly.
I don't know what drives politicians, but I'm sure part of it is we want employers to be happy and supporting us.
In spring 2022, the government made several changes to the temporary foreign worker program. They allowed some sectors to hire up to 30% of their workforce through the program for low-wage positions, and allowed temporary foreign workers to be brought in for some low-wage positions, even in areas with unemployment rates of over 6%. And that's not all.
The other part of who the temporary foreign workers are is these students. They came to the country with the idea that they might be able to stay if they studied here and got work experience here.
International students were drawn to Canada, where they saw a clear path from studying to work to permanent residency. And as provincial governments imposed austerity measures on post-secondary institutions, these institutions turned to international students to bring in more revenue, especially in Ontario.
Well, because, international students will pay 3 or 4 times the tuition of domestic students.
The numbers just became enormous. Like some colleges were, I don't like to say names, but one college, I believe, was taking more international students than Carleton University has students, and it's not that big of a college. So there was just a lack of oversight. And I think the federal government also let it go because they saw that these students were taking these jobs that employers were having trouble filling.
In the fall of 2022, the Trudeau government temporarily removed the cap on how many hours per week international students were allowed to work. It went from a 20-hour limit to no limit at all.
I do think the international student sort of became a de facto temporary foreign worker program.
All the while, politicians across party lines called for more.
We're determined to get more than our share of newcomers.
I am pro-immigration. I have been pro-immigration from day one. We are short 290,000 people. I was the only government that wrote letter after letter to the Prime Minister saying we need more people. They need a place to live.
One headline in the Toronto Star read, "Doug Ford wants to combat labor shortages with more immigrants." Within the article, the late BC NDP Premier John Horgan says the record-breaking influx of newcomers to his province is exciting news for our economy. But he also calls it challenging because it increases the need for housing, schools, and healthcare. At the federal level, Pierre Poilievre is campaigning to become leader of the Conservative Party. He's putting out all kinds of slick campaign videos like this one, titled "Let's Unleash Opportunity for Everyone Willing to Work Hard."
And we're going to speed up immigration, bring people here faster. Too many waiting lists, a backlog of 2 million people. We need the workers here. We need 1 million jobs to fill. We need immigration in Canada. And we've got to get the gatekeepers out of the way to bring in the best workers.
And this one, where he's standing with a young man holding a mug that says leftist tears on it.
I'm here with Thelong. He is an international student studying in Canada, planning to stay here. He's from Vietnam, and many of his peers are here as well. There are tens of thousands of Vietnamese students who will fortunately stay here after they're done their studies. And guess what? They want to sign up and be part of the Conservative Party because they know the alternative.
At a roundtable with self-described ethnic media, Poilievre responds at length to a question.
You mentioned immigration, and you mentioned what are we doing to take care of the domestic population. Look, I don't think the two are at cross purposes. We are going to need immigration to fill the over 500,000 job vacancies we have in Canada. There's just no way around it. And when I go to rural Canada and I go to a farm, their number one issue is they need workers. We need to bring people to Canada to supply our economy with a skilled workforce for the future. We have room. If you spread out every Canadian evenly in Canada, we would have 33 NFL-sized football fields to ourselves. one for each of us. You wouldn't even be able to see another Canadian. That's how much land we have. We're not running out of space. So I think that where immigration has always been a part of our success as a country, it will always be a part of our success.
There seemed to be a political consensus. We need more people to come here to work.
Doesn't matter if your name is Smith or Singh or Steinberg. Doesn't matter if your name is Martin or Mohammed. If you're prepared to work hard, contribute, follow the rules, raise your family, you can achieve your dreams in this country. You can take back.
In 2022, newcomers arrived in Canada in record numbers, and Canada's population grew by over 1 million people for the first time in its history. And when pollster Andrew Parkin does his check-in on Canadians' attitudes towards the immigration system,
2022 then essentially marked the year in which most of those indicators had reached their most positive point, essentially since we'd started tracking this in the late 1970s.
Canadians are feeling better about immigration than ever before. The political consensus was shared with the people, but it wouldn't last.
People don't react to press releases or reports about numbers. It takes time for that influx then to be felt on the ground, and that's when we then see things start to change.
Tomorrow, how the consensus broke and politicians reversed course.
The job market in Canada is very saturated, and it took me a long time to understand this.
The federal government should have said, look, we can increase the temporary foreign worker program a little, but we can't solve your problems through this.
The message on immigration is we're taking back control on immigration.
The radical, liberal, failed experiment with open borders.